Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Woodward, and I'm presenting in the Work-Life Balance part of the 40-Hour Summit. And this presentation is called There Must Be More to This Provincial Grading Life. So our goal here is to talk about meaningful marking. I teach in the Czech Republic, and so I'm going to use some kind of Britishisms, so we say marking instead of grading. But hopefully you'll walk away from the session with some grading hacks for high school teachers. It is geared more towards writing, but I ran my presentation through a fellow math teacher, and hopefully you can still find something. All right, so you may be like me, and you may have thought to yourself in this teaching journey, whoa, there's got to be more to this. And is this what I signed myself up for? So maybe it's just grading to do and to do. And so the goal of this presentation is also to help you have more life and life to its full. And so we're going to talk about ways you can do that. So a little bit about me. This is a picture from my school that I thought was kind of fun. I've taught and traveled in many different places. I taught in East Africa for a number of years. I've also lived in the UK, in the US, in Washington and Nebraska, where I did my master's. And now I live in the Czech Republic, which is just east of Germany. And just a month ago, I got married. So I put my kind of unofficial last name there, Walkenhorst. And so I joined the 40-Hour Workweek Club because I really wanted something different. It was a gift from my mom after graduating with my master's. And so I struggle with my attitude in teaching. Maybe you do too. And sometimes with grading, I struggle with my attitude. So along the journey, I think it's helpful that Angela showed me a couple of questions. And from my religious tradition, we're question askers. And so I would just ask you this first question: what are you really looking for? And what do you want? I think it's important to think about what are you hoping to get out of this, and kind of your why. So figure out what your why could be, and what you are hoping to achieve. So in order to help you kind of figure out what's your why, the first question is you might ask yourself with grading is what's required. So what does your district or school or administration or department head require? That's kind of the first question that you should really be taking a look at. And then I've got some other questions to help you kind of reflect, some questions to get you started. So another one that Angela helped me kind of narrow down is what's essential, and how can we really get back to those essential things? So here's a couple of reflective questions for you. Just gonna float myself over here. So our first question is, can you ask questions? And so when we give feedback in writing, even I think sometimes with math, we often just kind of put the correct answer and kind of hope to move on. But research says in many different sources that asking questions rather than just telling students what to do is better for generating ownership. So I could tell you 1,000 strategies, but I think it's better that I ask you questions about what could work for you. And if you'd like to know more, I've linked an article called The Genre of the End Comment. So when we write end comments at the end of an essay or paper or project, there's a whole genre. So that you might find that interesting. But I think it's important to ask questions because it helps you kind of place you as the teacher in the role of the co-learner rather than sort of the all-knower. So think about that. How can you ask questions to students? Things like, can you format this way? Or can you consider other perspectives in your response? Those kinds of questions. Another thing that you could look at is, can you give a weekly assignment? Depending on your district or your school's requirement, maybe you just need one really good assignment every week. This is something I still struggle with, sometimes pedagogically, but I'm coming to terms with the idea that more work does not necessarily equal better results. So maybe thinking about, just generating just one assignment per week. And that could be really revolutionary. Can you also batch your feedback? And so one thing that I found really helpful is I just grade on one day. So my students know Miss Woodward, which is still what I go by. I grade on Fridays. And so they'll say, oh, can I turn my assignment in late? And yep, no problem. Just know that I'm not going to get to it until Friday. And if a student's assignment is late, then they know that theirs is kind of put at the bottom of the to-do list. And so I grade all of my students' work on the same day, and it actually saves a lot of time because it's known, it's kind of batched. I work on my lesson plans and other curriculum things during the week. And so that's really nice. Some other strategies is, could you grade in class with students? So could you sit with a student with each of their projects while they're working on something else and give them sort of verbal feedback? Or could you make a video of their feedback if that's not as much work? Could you copy and paste comments? Maybe you note patterns of errors. I noticed that with my year 7. And so I could use the same comment, and then I realized this should be a teaching point because we're all doing the same thing. Could you give digital feedback, maybe on Google Classroom, or maybe the only things that you grade are digital? I was primarily in East Africa a paper-based teacher solely because the internet was not reliable. And since COVID, I've transitioned to fully digital, which was always a goal, but it's much easier with slightly more reliable internet. And so Google Classroom is really helpful, or Canvas or other mediums. There's plenty of out there that maybe you can do some things more digital, so you're not just carting home a bunch of papers. That was really revolutionary for me. Can you multiply your time? So some ways, maybe you can spend the last 5 or 10 minutes grading. We teach on a block schedule, so that's pretty easy to accomplish for me if I kind of build it in. Again, conferencing with students about the grade at the same time was really helpful. And one school I worked at actually had a teacher that requested sub-coverage. So she knew she had big projects and she was struggling to keep up with her grading. And so they just arranged that she would have sub-coverage. So if you have a big project, kind of maybe not weekly, but like kind of yearly or quarterly or something that's really essential, maybe you could get sub-coverage for that day. I always think it doesn't hurt to ask. My current school would not be great about giving that, but other schools, I think if you ask, you've got that relationship there. I think it's always a possibility. Again, can you grade more efficiently? Studies have shown that more time spent grading does not actually equate better student results. So for even a long paper of 3 to 4 pages, really you shouldn't be spending more than 10 minutes, maybe 15 max. And I just got this from my co-teacher that I taught at the university. And so it's really essential that you're not taking more than that amount of time to grade, because students are not looking at it. So again, also focus on high impact comments. So this is not the time to add in all the grammar points, the nitpicky parts. It's not by the end of the project, you're really focusing on higher level issues there. So not the time. Don't sweat the small things. Grammar is important and format's important, but that should really be along the way. And it takes time. It's a process. So try not to focus on that. Focus on more the higher level things. Something else that I've also incorporated is really actionable feedback. So what should the student do after they've been given the feedback back? Maybe 2 things that they did well, or 1 thing they did well, a couple areas for growth. And that's something that's, at least for me as a student, it's like, what do I need to fix? Kind of, what do I need to do? And I think it's helpful to kind of give those ideas. They're question asking, but also sort of actionable items. And I think don't disqualify peer editing. So make some time for peer editing or peer grading. I tell the students, like, this feedback is for you. It's also your project, your end goal, your exam. And so it's really helpful if they're familiar with the rubric and they're familiar with the project and the peer editing process. Could you use a rubric to speak for you? Sometimes we repeat ourselves, and the comment was written really well in the rubric. So if you find a really great rubric, you shouldn't really need lots of extensive comments, which students don't often read. So may use the rubric to speak for you. Maybe balance positive and negative feedback in a really genuine way. Interesting article said that students might actually not find positive comments to be real. So you want to balance that in a genuine way, but think about how you can help students really focus on growth rather than just criticism or just praise. Can you encourage reflection? So metacognition, so reflecting on both the product and the process, encourages growth and change more than just doing more. So assignments that build reflection as part of the assessment or after the assessment, so that students again can reflect, this really worked well for me, I should repeat this. Or I took a risk and I did this and it didn't really work out well. Or I want to try this other thing instead. So focusing on that, both the product, what they finished, and also the process of writing it is really helpful for future growth. And this metacognitive exercise can be helpful. It's geared towards writing again, and it starts at the bottom, most basic level. What did I do? And then what kind of ideas can I draw from this? I got these ideas from an online writing conference, but I think it could still work for math, with particularly maybe a project. Margaret Ponson kind of had these ideas, so her work is cited there if you'd like to know more information. But again, you can kind of look at their draft. You could look at their peer feedback and then also what the instructor gave. And so parts of the process to really understand how this would work well. I did this with my basic writing students. So students who maybe didn't do very well in secondary school or high school. And so they've taken this class to kind of catch them back up. And this was really helpful in helping them grow in their writing. And so I would just say for any sort of feedback or project, this could really help students reflect on the process and also like learn how to celebrate the things that did well rather than kind of feeling beaten down all the time. So again, here's some like product questions that you can ask. What steps did you take? Kind of react, how did you feel, kind of connecting, moving forward. I'm not going to spend lots of time on this, but you're welcome to use these resources later. And then kind of like larger theories, so kind of smaller to larger issues, how they can apply that work. Again, if you would like more information or her excellent resources, there's some more information here. It's also linked at the bottom of the back of the slide, so highly recommend her work. And again, maybe it's just making small changes. Can you make small changes? Can you edit the length or the size requirement? Sometimes I see teachers that, assign 10-page papers or these big projects, and that's nice. But if you don't have time to grade a 10-page paper, is that really the most effective use of your time, the student's time? Often students will have all their big due dates the very last week of school or the last week of the term or semester. Maybe that's not really that helpful if they've got 14 other things going on. So where possible to meet curriculum standards and expectations, maybe it's about adjusting those deadlines to be at different points in the semester so they don't compete with other classes. Maybe students just write a paragraph or a page instead of a longer response, or you want them to practice their writing, so you just have them write a quick sketch outline. So almost like writing snacks, like exercise snacks. We can kind of like discount an exercise like, if you don't do like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, it doesn't matter. But I found that, even exercise snacks of like 5 minutes of push-ups or 10 minutes of core workout actually still makes a big difference. So maybe we shouldn't discount kind of more these like snack exercises, especially if you think about like warm-ups, that's kind of a snack. So what could that look like maybe with feedback? Maybe think about changing what you assess. Maybe you reflect more the reflection letter, or you assess more the reflection letter or a weekly journal. Maybe you're worried that students are using AI to complete their work for them. Maybe you go back to pencil and paper in class, and that's only the thing that you mark and then give them feedback at the end. Or you could also think about ways to embrace AI. So I had a student, my school's very exam focused with IGCSE and IB. And so my student actually took their essay and put it into ChatGPT and asked it for a score based on the rubric. And they gave them a score. And then I said, don't tell me what your score is, and I'll score it and we'll see if it's similar. And AI actually scored it quite similar. It was a little bit higher and a little bit more generic. And so I kind of walked the student through like why I might score it this other way. And then we looked at why ChatGPT would score it another way. And then just talked about like, how could we use this possibly as a tool? Obviously, AI can't replace teachers or human feedback. But I think it could also be used as a tool perhaps to help students along the way. So yeah, something to think about. And last but not least is maybe thinking about using contract grading. So maybe changing the way you assess. Maybe an assignment is kind of just complete, incomplete, or pass, fail. Well, don't love those terms, but contract grading is shown to be more effort-based. It's more equitable for students of different socioeconomic and racial backgrounds and economic backgrounds. So contract grading could really revolutionize your classroom. I know when I taught at the university, I loved contract grading, and I would love to have taken it to my current school. Their school system works a little bit differently, so I would still love to explore that, but it is possible, depending on your district, depending on your administrator or department head. And if you're not familiar with contract grading, there's some resources at the end that you can take a look at. That's the idea that a student picks a grade to work for, and then they work towards that. And finally, maybe you just need to learn, which I'm learning very slowly, how to let go. So again, focus on your why. What are you really going for with feedback and projects? Shut out negativity. I know I have coworkers that stay up till midnight to work, and they work long hours, and they work Sunday afternoons, and they work at 11 o'clock at night. And I don't actually think that makes them better teachers. They're good teachers, but I often think, maybe that culture promotes burnout. And so maybe we need to learn how to let some things be. And kind of take my mom's advice whenever I'm freaking out about something is to take one bite of the elephant at a time. So maybe to consider the long view of teaching and process. As I think about my own journey as a writer, you can kind of see this progression here from high school to college, community college classes, blogging when I was in East Africa, the UK, and now, and then most recently my thesis and my master's. Yeah, writing is a process. And just as the road winds around, so has my writing, had moments where it was better or worse or needed more practice. And so I think embracing the idea that our students are also in the process, it is helpful to me to remember that there's kind of a longer view. I'm just planting seeds, which somebody else probably will get to see the fruit of. But my task is to just be faithful to that. And so I really believe wholeheartedly that we're part of the process. Sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes we get to bear the fruit of somebody else's really long process. And so just helping kind of keep that perspective. Again, the places our students will go, we're part of the process. And so that gives me a lot of hope, especially when I'm feeling discouraged with keeping work-life balance. And so, we're all part of the process. So if you are interested, here are some more resources for you. Oops, I just clicked out. You can click on the hyperlinks. Looks like it's kind of, so about contract grading, if you're interested in more teaching ideas with work-life balance, and there's some ideas there. If you're interested in metacognition, there's ideas there, or end comments. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Some other resources there. Here's some other resources about more contract grading I got from my instructor when I was doing my master's, and also some feedback for projects. Again, additional metacognitive resources. And then if you're interested in teaching writing, here's lots more resources for you to check out. Really excited about that. But again, thanks so much. If you have questions, there's my email. I'm happy to chat with you about that more. And I wish you all the best and more life in your work-life balance journey. Thank you so much.